for all of us who believe in a just and gentle world. This is a moment of reckoning. In the face of the divisiveness and bigotry that mark current debates and events, thoughtful people everywhere are desperately searching for meaningful ways to make change. And there is hope. I want to tell you about some remarkable young people right here in Toledo who are trying to use a very creative, homegrown approach as one of the ways to battle the injustices that they encounter in their neighborhoods. So I'm inviting all of you to come with me on an excursion. Together, let's trace the path that led to the emergence of this wonderful youth-led approach. Here's how it happened. In the fall of 2005, members of a neo-Nazi group marched through a predominantly black neighborhood in North Toledo. How many of you remember that? It was a sad and devastating time for all of us, wasn't it? Well, following the march, some young protesters were arrested. At the urging of community members, some of those who were arrested participated in a pilot restorative justice project. And as part of that project, they attended sessions facilitated by some of us, community members. The session that I facilitated focused on using art as a tool for self-expression and empowerment. It provided our young participants with an alternative way to process and articulate what they were feeling, what they had experienced. From the first point of contact, it was clear that these young people were traumatized. The trauma of the march, the arrests, the ensuing detentions had left them scared, hurt, extremely frustrated. Providing them with a safe space to share their messages and their grief was a priority in our session. And so we eased into the discussion and encouraged by a local artist, Terry Burton, what our young people could not articulate verbally, or what they didn't want to articulate verbally, they slowly drew out on pieces of paper. Drawing out those feelings opened the door to some critical conversations. Young people acknowledged the part that they had played on the day of the march, and they were fully willing to make amends. But they asked, why is it that just we have to restore justice? When our neighborhoods were invaded by a hate group, and when residents were subjected to such racially charged hate. The young participants, mostly black and brown, they spoke about the frequent and damaging encounters with racial injustices in our city. They spoke about feeling targeted and tracked and silenced and betrayed by people working in the very institutions that are supposed to nurture them and teach them and guide them and protect them. They spoke about feelings of hopelessness and despair. One young man raised his hand and he said in a quiet voice, "It just felt so good to join so many people in the protest." Others quickly agreed. Yes, it did feel good to do something about the pain that they'd been carrying inside for so long. And that was our entry point into our discussion about strategic, peaceful resistance, its power, and its relevance in today's increasingly violent world. In the next stage of this particular session, young people were so intrigued by the idea. They recalled watching marches on television in which people carried banners. What if we made our own banner with our own feelings, they asked. Our artists did manage to create a mixed media piece. It was a collage of the feelings they had expressed: anger, fear, hate, just wanting to be heard. They looked long and hard at their collage, and they had a private discussion, and then they came back. And they said, could we work on another piece? It would depict the kind of community that we wanted to build. And they said it would, at once, be a way of restoring our community, and it would be our act of peaceful resistance. Unfortunately, the project was coming to a close, and they had other requirements to fulfill. I know. And so they did not get to work on that next piece, the one that would look ahead. But a seed was planted, and as you will see, it did bear fruit. Word got around that some young people in North Toledo were using art as a way of expressing their feelings about the injustices they encountered in their communities. In the weeks and months that followed, scores of young people joined the conversations. Every group went through a similar process. Emotional release was a prerequisite. And then they traced their feelings, they shared their insights and visions for change. They worked with local artists to bring these visions to life in the form of murals, and finally, they unveiled their murals in front of an audience. The signature trajectory for what we came to call creative, peaceful resistance was taking shape. Youth, creative as always, even came up with the chant. We can't breathe, CPR. They taught me a really cool dance move that goes with that chant. No. I will spare you. I would leave that out of this presentation. And now, could somebody do a drum roll? And now, I'm very excited to present you all with just a sample of the beautiful visions that came out of some of those critical conversations. In October of 2006, 1 year since the neo-Nazi intrusion of 2005, young people gathered in front of a large crowd. I see some of you who were there. And they unveiled their mural. They called it Rising Above Bigotry, painted by local artist Yusuf Latif. In the center panel, a young boy rises out of Woodward High School. He's a young shoot with roots planted firmly in his strong community. In his hand, he bears a brilliant lantern, signifying the enlightenment that youth have to offer us. In this panel, a young girl looks at her visions for change and smiles. Behind her, books and hands represent knowledge and action, key factors in building just communities. In this panel, a young boy looks wistfully at the visions for change. Behind him, neighborhood elders keep watch, tired but strong. Youth have spoken with me about a lot of issues that they are facing in their communities, but one of them stands out. They speak about their relationships with law enforcement as one of the most critical issues facing their lives. And as their creative, peaceful act of resistance, they came up with the ideas for the next mural. In this mural, which is called Youth Engage Police Officers, painted by Sal Schicciano, young people are actually having a conversation with law enforcement. This mural depicts what relationships between Black youth and police officers should look like. In the bottom left-hand corner, young people are asking officers to pause and reflect on the problems in communities and then recruit youth to work with them to fix those problems. In the top left-hand corner, young people are asking police officers to get to know them on basketball courts and in neighborhood parks, and not just when they arrest them and put handcuffs on them and take them to jail. In the top right-hand corner, youth want to work alongside police officers as they build and maintain just and peaceful communities. And in the bottom right-hand corner, they return to a familiar theme. They want to be heard. They urge police officers to listen carefully, to verbal and non-verbal cues before they jump to conclusions and resort to the use of force. And finally, in the center of the mural, we too are keepers of justice, the youth assert. This particular mural has succeeded in bridging some very tough divides in our community. It started conversations, but we still have a long way to go. In this next mural, it's called Rescue Youth, painted by Nate Masternak. Young people speak about their desperate need for safe spaces to gather, play, reflect, organize, learn, and just be kids. In the discussions that led up to the production of this mural, young people spoke about the daily stresses in their lives, the chains that bound them, the fires that scorched them, a system that seemed menacing, where sentiments like love and joy, hope and dignity seemed so elusive. They saw themselves as endangered, in need of a sanctuary to protect them and nurture them. They identified Wilson Park as a perfect space for such a sanctuary. And I'm happy to tell you that thanks to the visionary youth and elders, as well as local and state leaders who are really committed to the vision of CPR, work on the Youth Vision's Reflection Park has just begun. process of trying to seed creative, peaceful resistance as a small, homegrown, youth-led model of the soil. It's been slow, very slow, and difficult at times. But the journey itself continues to be extraordinarily enlightening, humbling, rewarding. I have learned so much from the young people that I've had the privilege of working with. Much more than I can share with you in 18 minutes. Maybe 1 minute more. That's okay. But I do want to draw out and underscore some of the lessons that came out of this process. They're not brand new ideas by any means, but they can be applied in new contexts to spark change in individuals and whole communities. The first lesson is that art can be an extraordinary tool for helping young people express things that they otherwise can't talk about. The process, in turn, helps them feel much more comfortable talking in group settings or even in very large public events. The second lesson is that publicly displaying community-based art of this kind can help foster a sense of community ownership, so important to the young people that I work with. In every mural project, young people identified personally with the work. It spoke to them. They talked about how good it felt to beautify their neighborhoods with their visions for change. They felt that their work was helping to promote a sense of pride and belonging in their neighborhoods. And finally, the third lesson is that community-based art of this kind can really help cultivate fruitful civic dialogues. Every project brought together a broad spectrum of people, from the private and public sector. Hearing young people describe their visions for change and seeing them so brilliantly depicted in the murals, it did much more than just inform them. It moved them deeply. In closing, I can't resist sharing just one more mural with all of you. I was thinking about a young man who, towards the end of this mural project, actually became quite emotional. I worked with him since he was about here, and now he's here. He talked about how he was seated in a session with elected officials, and he talked about how he never thought that he would be called a leader. He never thought that he would speak in public. He never thought that when he was speaking, the mayor and commissioner would be taking notes, and they did. And he never thought that his ideas would become part of a permanently installed art piece in his neighborhood. He said it was a story, or these were many stories, that he really looked forward to sharing with his children and his grandchildren someday, and that the mural was a positive legacy he was leaving behind. This young man was instrumental in informing and guiding the last mural that I will share with you. At a time when so many of our young people feel like they are under threat, under assault, this mural, called Rise, speaks to us about the roles that young people in North Toledo want to play in their neighborhoods. Resisting negative stereotypes, rejecting the use of force, they combine their creative energy and the force within, lifting their neighborhoods and all of us to great new heights. They see themselves as powerful as the forces of fire, water, earth, and wind. And as they rise, we all do,